Hello guys, it's Brandon from Awesome Ninja Fitness, where we have trained hundreds of athletes to get the strength, skills, and freedom of movement of a bodyweight skills athlete. And now today, I want to talk about how you can learn any single skill possible. Now, I bring this up because a lot of people want to learn awesome skills, and it's great, but how do you actually learn how to do it? Let's say you have zero experience. We have taught hundreds of athletes from gymnastics, parkour, and ninja warrior, since we have over a decade of experience in those sports, as well calisthenics and bodyweight skills training here within the community. I just came back from a special training, specifically training gymnastics coaches how to do this exact thing. And that's why I wanted to share it with you guys here today. When we first started teaching Ninja Warrior, for example, in Canada, we were the only Ninja Warrior dedicated gym. There was an obstacle course gym as well, so it wasn't just us, but specifically dedicated. So we had absolutely no one to learn from. We didn't have any expertise, but we had to learn everything on our own. Now, it's kind of the same thing when it comes to parkour. The good news is we had a lot of tutorials, but when we got more advanced in parkour, there were certain moves that there aren't really any tutorials about. Think of jumping over a thing with a half spin, and then you do a twist, pop off, backflip, land. There's no tutorials on it. So we had to learn how to break down a skill and how to learn it. There are only two things that you need to know. First, you need to know what are the positions that your body needs to be in order to do the skill. So if someone filmed you doing the move, what are the key positions? Second is, what are the actions your body needs to be able to do in order to do that move? What do you need to do from that position to that action? I'm going to use a very simple example, such as a backflip. Use that as an example of how you could break it down. Once you know the positions and actions, then you kind of know what are some prerequisites or some drills that you can do in order to get that. So let's start with the backflip. If we took a video of a backflip and we saw it in slow-mo, actions we need to be able to do is first jump up as high as you can. Seems pretty simple. There are some small things in there. If you look at someone mastering it, their hips are slightly open, their shoulders are slightly open. So think of you're jumping as high as you can and not moving further than a big step back. The second position is knees to your shoulders, doing that tuck ball position. The third position is, well, you need to open up, and then the last position is the landing position. Those are the kind of like the key points, is the bottom part, top part, ball part, landing part, if you just had to think of the positions. When it comes to the positions, certain moves require different types of things. Strength, is it technique, is it mental? Something such as a planche, there isn't really a lot of actions and positions. There's one position. And so you need to know, muscles that you need to be able to do in order to hold that position. Like a planche, there isn't really many actions. It's getting into the thing. With a backflip, you see how getting into the move, the key points, the key checkpoints would say. Now, how do we get into each one of them, right? The first one was the bottom squat position and the top landing position. That you need to jump as high as you can. I think most people can do that. Would probably need to figure out is the next part, which is tucking your knees to your chest in order to create this ball in this spin. So in the backflip example, you would need to know how high to jump and when to do that action, because that is the action. When am I done the action? When have I reached the next position? And then when do I do the next action, right? Now, we're not going to get into detail of strength, coordination, mind-body connection, and all that other stuff. That's going to be for another video. The main thing I want to get at is just these key points. And then you also need to know, the next one is when to open up. So you need to have some sort of timing for that, and then landing. To master a backflip, you would take every single action, every single position, and you could be able to isolate each one of those things and do them on their own. And then you put them all together, right? First, landing, you could probably go from a box that would be about the same height of which you would open up and land. You jump down and you land. Congratulations, you have worked on that part. You can work on jumping as high as you can and add a little bit of maybe snapping your fingers, having a mental key of once you jump as high as you can, once you're at your max, you think about here. That could be another thing. The third part is the tuck. So somehow you would need to be able to learn how to do a roll. So now here's the prerequisite. There is a move that helps you do that, which is called a back roll. Surprise, a back tuck is just a jumping back roll. Not really that crazy, huh? You would need to be able to do a back roll. So that's a prerequisite, but it's also a drill. So you would need to know how to jump as high as you can, a back roll, and then land. Why would you isolate each of those things? Let's say in a back roll, it is extremely slow. So you know that the back roll is your issue. Then you would be able to isolate that, work on those drills, and figure out why. Again, each move has other subcomponents, which we'll go over later. So you can isolate each one of them, figure out where the issue is, and slowly put them together. The next step, if you're able to, is being able to combine a couple of these things together. So if you had something, let's say just below your shoulders height, that you could jump up and land on your back, then that's basically the first half of the move. And then if you had something, same thing, about chest high, and you could start on your back and roll and then land off. Now you have two pieces and you're putting it together. And then maybe to put it together should either be someone who can spot you or someone who literally stands behind you and you do a back roll of them, or ideally you find something that's the right height, but that's a little bit harder when you're training on your own. You know, parkour, we do it, and that's how you figure it out. So that's the main thing I wanted to share. So what I'd like is look at what other moves that people have some difficulties and how we can simplify that. I see that a lot of people want to talk about handstand, so let's get into that. It's a lot easier. What is the action you do? You start standing up, and then you kick over, and then you hold in the handstand, right? That's really the actions and positions. You would find a way in order to practice those two things as simple as possible, right? To kick up, do it against a wall so something stops you so you can figure out how hard to kick. To figure out the handstand position, if you can't hold it, same thing, do it against a wall. Now, if you look at a better position, right, maybe you do chest in front. So the last step about this is if you really want to master a skill, find a video or film someone doing the best version of that skill. Sometimes you might not know what that is. For example, if there's a move that you see in gymnastics, there's a good chance that a gymnast doing it as perfectly as possible. Now, there are moves that doesn't happen. So for example, in parkour, maybe there's a version of it that has a cool style, such as there are people who do backflips and then they grab their ankles and they do this weird star thing. Maybe you want to learn that. Then maybe the prerequisite is being able to do a backflip. But still, if you can find the best version of that thing, you'll have a visual representation of what you need to do. Then you can compare that to what you are doing, and it's very easy to put one and one together and figure out what you're doing differently. One of the biggest mistakes in a backflip is people go too far. They go too far backwards. There's two reasons for that. The first one is because a lot of times when people are first learning, they're learning to land into something soft. So they're standing on something hard, landing in something soft. This could be water, sand, or mats if you're in a facility, or even mattresses. So your brain doesn't want to land on the solid thing because it's not comfortable or it's scared. So what does it do? It jumps slightly further back. If you look at a proper backflip, you look at where they are looking. They're either looking straight ahead or slightly up. I learned to look straight down at my feet when doing it before they tuck. If you look at examples in parkour, for example, they really throw their head back a lot. So look at the difference of people doing it on height, because they play with that, versus on the ground. The second reason why they do that is because it makes the backflip, the tuck slightly easier. If you jump straight up, you're like this, and then you tuck in, right? You have to do basically a 360. If you jump like this, and then you tuck, you only have to do 3/4 of the rotation. So if your abs are weak, so doing leg raises, which is another example how to break down the move even simpler and break it down. If you need to do a back tuck and you bring your knees to your chest and it's too slow, then there's one of your issues. But if you are trying to actually break it down properly, then you'll notice that they actually go a lot higher than they go do far, right? It's even if you jump far, yes, you could theoretically do it, but this is why there's not like a one perfect way. But if you find the most perfect version of something, you find the positions and you find the actions, you try to figure out what you're doing that's differently, then you can find the best thing of that. Now, with working with a coach, it makes it so much easier to know what mistakes you are doing and what your goals are. For example, if your goal is just to be able to do a backflip as quickly as possible, then yes, doing a little bit of cheating and all that stuff, or throwing yourself a little bit back, or opening yourself extra so that the tuck's a little bit easier. There's ways of doing that. I mean, you've seen parkour. We're not looking for the perfect backflip. A lot of times, we're just looking for a really good one, and there's different ways of changing it. While in gymnastics, you get scored on it, and it's going to affect your future moves. So if you just want to be able to do a backflip, or for example, in parkour, your goal is to do a backflip on height. So if you're going from height to go down, you actually do want to open up so that you can see the ground sooner, so that you know when to land when you're not used to it. Well, in gymnastics, the next step for a backflip would probably be even a double backflip or a back layout in which you're completely straight. And if you do it the regular way, like the classic, like, I can do a backflip way, you won't be able to succeed to do that move in the future, or at least it's going to be really, really hard. So when you work with a coach and they're able to break down why you're doing it, what's the purpose of it based on your goals, it makes it so much easier. Make sure you're doing the right skills, the right drills, the right progressions, or even just how to break down the move in a way that makes it as easy for your goal as possible. Because even just a backflip, those two different goals, the way that I would teach a backflip for a parkour athlete versus a gymnast, are similar, not exactly the same. Same with what I teach the way in the Awesome Ninja Fitness community, that if you want to be a part of it, you can join that free. And that's for those in social media. Go ahead and check. For those in the live call, in which we will have a Q&A at the end talking about this a little bit more, we would teach it more of the parkour-ish way first, and then you fix it later. Just because you're probably not going to be doing a back layout. The max backflip you're probably going to do is a back tuck. A back pike, which takes flexibility, and we work on that. But anyways, that's a side rant of how awesome the community is and what people are learning. All this to say, to break this all down, if you are alone and you're not working with anyone, and you need to be able to learn how to do a move, one of the ways of doing that is figuring out or finding the perfect and best version of that skill is. Figuring out what are the actions your body needs to do and what positions it needs to get into between those actions. So the positions and what actions you need to go in. This affects way more. The more complicated the move is, the better this is going to help you. Now, I really hope next time we're going to break down a little bit more of that 3-pillar strategy that we talked about on how every single move has 3 additional things. This is just one of those pillars. This has to do with the technique side of it, and it breaks down a little bit of strength, but we'll talk about that next time. So look forward to that. If you want to join the community and join these live calls, then go ahead. There should be a link somewhere for those in the social media space. For those on the live call, we're going to go into Q&A, and everyone here, there's only one thing you got to remember is stay awesome.